Welcome to Coming Clean, the podcast dedicated to common sense environmental dialogue, environmental optimism, and real environmental solutions. This show is proudly powered by Ørsted. Welcome back to Coming Clean with your host, Benji Backer. For now, we have a new guest host who is joining us, who will be with us for a few months here. So I'm your host for now, is what I meant to say. And that's because Stephen Perkins is joining us from his beautiful home in Texas to take over while I'm on a much-needed sabbatical that I'll be taking kind of for an undetermined amount of time, probably the next few months. And the only person that's more well-equipped to run this show than me is Stephen. So it's perfect, because once I give the reins over to him for a few episodes, he might just take it and run with it forever. But Stephen, welcome to the show. Welcome to your show for a while. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to the guests, or as a guest, but also as a host, and why you're so excited to do this, what your background is, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Benji, for entrusting me with your baby for a few months, and I'm hoping, to carry it on well. I'm Stephen Perkins. For the last month, I've been ACC's Chief Operating Officer. Before that, I was our Vice President of Grassroots Strategy, came into that role about 2.5 years ago. But have known Benji for what feels like to me, I guess, for a while, since
Three lifetimes.
Yeah, since 2014. Yeah, I think the first time we met in person was back when CPAC was good, and in DC we were there, and you were incredibly helpful to me on some projects at the time, and in return, I've tried to help you with ACC, and my background is interesting. A lot of people, when they ask, like, how did you get to ACC, or wasn't the environment always something you thought you would work on? I've always said, like, I never would have imagined myself working for an environmental nonprofit. But I'll talk a little bit about how that's been so great. But I started out doing sort of political media. I originally wanted to be a political broadcaster or journalist in college, and decided around that time that maybe that wasn't the best path. But politics has always been something that I've been interested in, particularly on the messaging side, and the building community around issues and around things that affect people's lives. So I've done everything from leadership development and marketing, working with nonprofits on management and their communications and stuff, all the way to campaign work, digital politics, and along the way was fortunate enough to be on kind of the early volunteer team at ACC, where we were wearing all sorts.
Doing freeconferencecall.com.
Yeah,
about
those
10
days.
p.m. Eastern every Tuesday or something, so that we could talk about what the heck we were building at ACC, which we had no idea what we were doing back then.
Back when we really had no idea what we were doing in many ways, but we wore all sorts of different hats. So that's been great, and then obviously joined 2.5 years ago full time. So it's kind of a full circle moment, but I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Well, Stephen, I mean, you're going to be taking over for me to talk through, more important issues, more important topics about climate and the environment, different solutions that people haven't heard about yet. We've had so many great guests recently talking about everything from the rainforest to the Inflation Reduction Act to water quality in the West, and topics that people are really caring about. But what you didn't mention about your background is that since you joined ACC, you've been leading our grassroots work, and you've solely transformed it with your team, of course, into a powerhouse. When you started, it was a organization with just a small footprint in a few areas around the country, really just a budding organization. Now it's fully blossoming in a lot of places. But across that timeline, you've been able to talk to thousands of young people, and you've also been able to see a lot of solutions yourself, some with me and some separately. And we've had a lot of fun kind of learning about those sorts of things on the ground. And I think that's something that makes ACC special, is that not only do we have a presence of a different cohort of young people, it's young, right of center or independent, some left of center people who are just sick of the narrative that these issues either don't exist or that we need alarmist solutions to it. that has exposed a lot of really important and interesting information that we're going to cover in future episodes while you're here. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the learnings that you've really appreciated, some of the main takeaways that you've had, and some of the themes that you're hoping to instill over the coming months in some of the episodes?
When I think about a lot of groups think about grassroots in very political terms. At ACC, we think of grassroots in terms of building community and just bringing people on board who share the same sort of values and outlooks. And so I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is that um, for most people that we talk to, this is not a political issue. This is not something they approach from a political end. It is for some people a moral issue. For some people, it is just about taking care of what they've been given here on the earth, and it's about creating a healthier future for future generations. And so, I think a big learning moment has just been not only all the solutions that are out there that don't get talked about enough, which is exciting about this podcast, but also the everyday climate heroes that we don't talk about, right? People who in their own community have said, "I can't solve the whole issue,
You're
but
right.
I'm willing to do my part," whether that is something seemingly small, like switching to more sustainable products, or something bigger, like our friends in San Antonio, for example, who have created this really robust community garden network. And so, um, yeah, I think the biggest learning has just been that there is so much beyond what we often think about when we are in our bubble, because we do this every day, and for most people, this is something they care about, but they're not doing it every day. And even for a lot of communities who they don't think about it at all, it's just kind of who they are. I think about um, a lot of the people who I've met here in Texas and across the South, people who are conservationists at heart, but won't maybe put that title on themselves. It's just a cultural thing that you take care of your community. So there's been a lot of learning
Well,
on that.
yeah, I mean, I think that let's just hit on that for a second because most people, if you said who are the climate heroes, even if you disagree with them, the climate heroes would off the top of people's heads be Greta Thunberg, Leonardo DiCaprio, Al Gore, those sorts of people, AOC. And the reality is, you can love or hate their values. That's like, it's totally up to political persuasion. But the real heroes aren't them. And the real heroes are the people on the ground working for a cleaner, better future, whether they are dedicated to climate as their sole life focus, which some are, or whether or not they are just, like you said, caring about their local community. And it's kind of like that old adage about how, like, the butterfly effect of every single ripple matters. Like, one butterfly dies and it affects the whole ecosystem and it affects the whole world. It's the same thing on climate. Every single solution is a part of a snowball that we need to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if anyone has grown up, you've not grown up around snow, but if you've grown up around snow, you know that it takes a while to build those big snowballs, and it just it does start to grow and grow and grow, and that starts at the community level. It does not start at the Leonardo DiCaprio level or the government level or the UN level, even though those conversations are important. So what I'm really excited about you instilling in this podcast is that local community mindset, because a lot of people dilute that. They say, oh, it doesn't matter. This is too big of a problem. Big problems require small solutions that add up to big solutions. There's no one silver bullet to any issue, let alone something as complex as environmental issues. And I think the last podcast that, you're kind of transitioning to your own from, talked about how even a water issue in the Western United States, which is a very regionally specific issue, that doesn't have a silver bullet. And that's under an umbrella of, like, water is below conservation, which is below the environment, which is below climate. There's so many different nuances within each category of environmental issues, and it does start at the community level. I guess, what have you felt like when you think about community leadership is the bread and butter of how we get to those wide scale solutions? Like, where do you see, is it entrepreneurship? Is it community? Is it uh, advocacy? Is it teamwork? Is it small businesses, large businesses? What are you seeing from these smaller scale solutions as a trend that actually makes something go?
Well, I think in many ways it's all of the above, but really it's about people who are willing to step up and be leaders within their community. And that's something that we try to foster, that environment of leadership at ACC. But when you look at communities that have done conservation well, or have done climate resiliency well, it is required leadership from a lot of different people at a lot of different levels. It's not just a local government coming in and saying, we have this great conservation plan and everything's going to go well together. It has been leaders of local organizations. It's been, branch leaders of ours. It's been local elected officials, people who run for office in order to have a better conservation policy. It's been about connecting the dots between the public and business and all that. So, uh, uh, and that's a topic that's I'm really passionate about, is how can we train more people to be the leaders that communities require. Anytime you think about building community, you have to have, not a central person, but you have to have people who act as the catalyst for that change.
Mhm. Yeah, and those leaders are like I think a lot of the time people are like, okay, how do I emulate what Benji's done in building ACC? And it's like actually the hard work is not building ACC, it's building the local leadership that it takes to sustain a national organization. There's like ACC is nothing without its local community leaders, and the planet is nothing without local community leaders. And that's the hardest job because you are truly doing the work on the ground, and whether that's being a worker in the energy space or restoring wetlands as a volunteer or full time, you know, being a farmer. These are the sorts of things that it takes to change course for the world, and it's the doers rather than the sayers that actually end up changing things. And so, you know, you are in the midst of the doers and the sayers, and I think you're going to bring a really interesting approach to the podcast because you have worked with politicians, you have worked with the business leaders, you also worked with the community on the ground leaders, and bridging that divide of the sayers and the doers is what will bring us the success that we need. I guess one last question before kind of giving you the reins for this next episode, which you'll be taking on past the Catherine Sorensen episode. Uh, when you think about ACC's successes and our successes over the last 2 or 3 years, what do you think is best exemplifying this exact strategy of community leadership? Where do you feel like we've been able to show that the most? Or I guess a couple examples just to kind of highlight what ACC is doing to embody this. What does that look like for you?
I think of a lot of different examples because we have some really strong branches, but a few that stand out to me. I'll use the example again of our San Antonio branch. I mean, these are uh, uh, um, people who have sustainability as a passion, and they've identified a need in their community for more community gardening and an ability for people to connect with nature, and they just went out and did it. Like they really took the reins, so to speak, and went with it. I think about our DMV, our DC area branch, who is mixed with some sustainability minded people, some politically minded people, and they've created a really great combination of the two, where they are able to have policy discussions, but they're also able to go hike, mountains mountains for DC, I guess, big hills. They've been able to do that. I think about the people in Florida who have done incredible work on our coast of not just cleaning up the coastline, but supporting things like oyster, and reef restoration. And so there are a lot
Yeah.
of examples from across the country and it's really been about people who have said, you know what, I don't know everything about this, and I don't know everybody who can help me, but I'm going to put a foot out there and I'm going to get started and see what we can build. And they've built really incredible communities.
Well, a great example of that is just the fact that you're talking about regional, hyper localized branches that are doing their own things for their own communities. The, the DC branch can't really do coastal reef restoration, and the Florida branches can't really do hikes even on hills. But they're all doing their own things in their own communities that work for them, and that amounts to national and international progress. Because when you're building a community at that level, not only are you making a difference at the local level, but you're also part of this national network that ACC has created that has amounted in bipartisan wins for the environment, that has amounted in this, one of the largest caucuses in Congress being conservatives who care about climate change. That would have never been possible without these local community branches. You've had international cooperation between Republicans and Democrats at conferences about climate change overseas, working with other countries. None of that is possible without the local community action. And so it's really a 2-for-1. You get the local community action, which adds up to really big progress, but you also get national and international leaders to listen more and more the bigger that gets. And so it's all interconnected. These Florida chapters and DC chapters and San Antonio chapters might seem separate, but they're not. They're pushing for the same goal in their own areas, and that's resulting in big change worldwide. And you've helped foster that growth. And so, as I'm incredibly appreciative of what you've done to transform ACC, and hopefully transform this podcast as well into something that is bigger and better than it could have been without you. And that's one of the things that is special about you, Stephen, is that you're a doer, you're not a sayer, and you're out there doing the work. And so you're the best equipped to lead this podcast for a while. You're the best equipped to showcase solutions, the best equipped to showcase how communities can lead. And I'm really just excited to see where you take this.
Well, I appreciate that. And alluding back to earlier, I never thought I'd work for an environmental nonprofit, but the interactions that I get to have on a weekly basis with our members and with our branch leaders really reminds me it's rare to have a job where you're reminded so regularly why what you do is important. And this is a role where I get that reminder just about every day. And so I'm excited to hopefully share, just as you've been doing, share hope, share stories of success, share solutions that people can start to feel good about. And to your point, it can feel like we are part of a really international community of people who care about this. It's not just, me and my city who is kind of alone on it. It's all of us involved.
Well, Stephen, I couldn't have said it better myself, and I'm going to hand the reins over to you. Coming Clean, the podcast, is going to be hosted by Stephen until I'm back from my sabbatical. Really excited to come back and lead the show and work with you on that as well, and really excited to see where you take this. Stephen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Benji. Appreciate it.
And before we jump, the Coming Clean podcast is grateful to be powered by Ørsted, a wonderful company strengthening America's energy security with reliable and domestic clean energy. Through its integrated renewable energy solutions, Ørsted is creating American jobs, investing in American communities, and driving American innovation, all while preserving our country's natural habitats. A clean energy future truly connects us all, and Ørsted is helping lead the charge. To learn more, visit us.orsted.com.